Hi everyone, good afternoon. Welcome to the top tier PvP YouTube channel. My name is Brennan. I'll be your moderator for today. In this video, I will be demonstrating the Disciplined Priest PvP rotation in terms of each individual skill to be used on your action bar and how I set up my action bars and so forth. Maybe give you a bit of insight onto how to do yours. I typically don't run any add-ons associated with my action bars, having played WoW for many years since BC, and recently coming back to WoW after a 7-year hiatus when Dragonflight came out. It just kind of kept with me that the action bar seems to be more comfortable for myself. So to each his own, whatever you feel comfortable with. I find myself to have the basic 3-tier action bar primarily used for my offensive, defensive, and utility-based spells. So yeah, as of the Disc Priest, your primary healing is going to be through Atonement, which is based off of your damage output. So the more damage that you put in, the more healing you'll be putting out for your team for those afflicted by Atonement. So it's important to spread Atonement through various healing spells, and we'll go over that today too as well. But as you can see, these are my action bars that are currently set up. We've got the lower bottom one here, the second here, and then the third here on the top. So what I typically do is try to keep my rotation from left to right, so it makes it easy just to do, deal out and dish out as much damage or healing when it seems necessary. So in particular, I often cast, to start. I guess we can go down from each spell to each spell. So we can start and go ahead with some of the utility base. We'll go from the top to the bottom here. In terms of we'll go from the top to the bottom here. Be a good idea. In terms of team fight initiations and RBGS and just battlegrounds in general, I do recommend using Power Word Infusion as one of the first kind of precursors to a team fight in terms of getting your specific damage dealers, such as like a Boomy or a Warlock, really started to pump in those direct damage on the particular target of the team fight. So, and it also helps you apply, since it increases your haste, it helps apply more dots and so forth to the rest of the team. It also reduces the global cooldown, which will help you allow to cast more spells in preparation for the beginning of the team fight. So I often do cast Power Word Infusion, and being one of the first spells that I do cast in team fight on the specific DPS. Again, I work with that on the Warlock, the Boomy, Shaman, etc. Whoever's your kind of top damage dealer, and benefits from haste more than others. So start with VI. The next we're going to be going down. It's going to be often a Mass Dispel. I like to put out Mass Dispel as one of my first kind of offensive heals. It's got a long cooldown of 45 seconds out the particular talent that reduces the cooldown. But that's a great way to remove any additional shields and initial buffs and so forth that they had at the starting. The zone that you can kind of remove included like Power Word Fortitude. You'd be surprised how removing those particular buffs can really, start tilting the team fight in your advantage from having doing so. So ideally, Mass Dispel, Power Infusion are one of the first 2 spells that I like to put out first in team fights when we're grouped. I'm a little bit farther back, etc. The next would be, let's see, typically end up putting out Rapture and Archangel. For one reason or another, the Archangel actually increases the shield absorption of Rapture on the specific targets, so that allows those targets that do have Rapture to increase their absorption or damage reduction dealt to them by 60% instead of 40%. That Rapture tends to provide on its own, so you get an additional 20% from Archangel. Again, it's only a minute cooldown, so it's ideal to use. I would consider it relatively early as possible, but you can use it midway through the team fight too as well to pick up the remainder of your team if need be. I like to do it for the shield absorption and any additional hard hitters that are starting to put out their talents as they put together and so forth, or they put out their most damage out in the beginning. So as soon as Rapture's all up on the team, and everyone also has Atonement through that too as well through Rapture, You can go ahead and hit Power Word Radiance, which helps spread, in addition to more atonement and healing in case there happens to be an AoE. But at that time, your shields should be holding together pretty strong. So a great opportunity would be put down as soon as everyone's atoned with Rapture would be to put down Dark Archangel, which is also a minute cooldown PvP talent. Increases the damage of those afflicted by your atonement and yourself by 15% for 8 seconds. So just to kind of tilt the team fight in your direction initially, is to increase the damage output, especially on targets that the healers might not be ready to particularly heal. So Dark Archangel is a great way to just kind of tilt the damage output in initial team fights and scale it into your favor. In addition to the damage reduction that you have with Archangel, in addition to the healing too as well that comes along with it, with like Power Word Radiance that you're looking to spam too as well during that period of time. So again, you kind of have a really strong initiative with Mass Dispel, Power Word Infusion, Archangel, Rapture, and Dark Archangel. So I often keep it on the left side of the top and middle action bar in order to kind of keep utility and some defensive or offensive heals to start on the left. In terms of secondary options to be used, if they do happen to come across a heavy melee frontline in your battlegrounds and they're charging into your backline, a great way to go about to kind of negate that would be to Leap of Faith some of those targets back out of harm's way, or you can go ahead and peel for them with Psychic Scream or Void Tendrils, and that way you'll move them into place, or you'll fear them, so they'll be less inclined to stay on your backline DPS, and they may be just kind of scattered there afterwards. It's a great option to go ahead and just kind of scatter that particular front line where you used to be Psychic Scream and also Void Tendrils. Just to more snare effects. The Leap of Faith is something also to consider too as well, in addition to pulling teammates out if need be. But if you have an overextended warrior or ret pally or DK or melee class DPS that overextend themselves in the team fight to start, you can have them pulled out prior to that and kind of regroup to initiate a little bit more, conservative than anything else than just too aggressive. It happens from time to time, people make mistakes and so forth. But Leap of Faith is a great utility piece to have that, that individual come back to the group in itself. Angelic Feather is great in terms of mobility. It allows the DPS who then been snared, the DPS front line that had been blocking your back line. On your ranged DPS, you can actually use your Angelic Feathers on your backline DPS to have them move about faster and away from those that are currently being CC'd. So keep that an option for sure. Let's see, the next would be, since I've been able to spam Power Word Shield, keep that relatively active on targets at all times, in addition to Renew, making sure those dots are pretty active. Helps negate any particular damage over time that, balanced roots or affliction locks and so forth. Or the heavy cleave comp that we'll be doing in terms of damage and sustainability in that team fight. The next would be the importance of spreading Purge the Wicked. So when you hit one target with Purge the Wicked, you could spread it to 2 additional targets nearby, which would be Penance. So as teams are generally grouped together in those team fights, it's a great way to spread. It's a great way to spread. It's a great way to spread that Purge the Wicked in order to increase that atonement heal that you have kind of already spammed on your teammates and so forth. So good rotation would be just to
target something first.
Purge the Wicked, Penance. Again, that allows the Purge the Wicked to spread to additional targets in the location. So technically, if you apply 3 penances with 3 Purge the Wicked, you can spread up to 9 total members. So great way to spread those Purge the Wickeds in order to get everyone dotted up during the team fight. Let's see which would be next. So again, Flash Shield would be more so appropriate to use when it's procced as opposed to just free casting it, because that's not often ideal. I mean, it is rather mana heavy too as well, and you're not going to just be standing there casting Flash Shield. You run out of mana relatively quick, so use that when the opportunity comes, when you do get that proc for that instant and free Flash Shield. That allows you Purge the Wickets to take some time to build up to as well, and increase that healing up to 50% based on one of the talents associated with Flash Shield. Another important factor to do as well to take in consideration is to who you're applying penance to, and dispelling too as well. So dispels and penances are going to be primarily on the enemy target that you're looking to target call. So the dispel magic help keeps the reduction of healing done through their healers. The penance just helps with slowing and healing your team too as well, through the damage that you put out for it. So the more CC that you can put on the enemy target, target called for that team fight, the better. And the more dispel magics you can put out too as well, the better. So ideally these two, penance and dispel magic, are ideal for using on the enemy target during team fights. So yeah, just Purge the Wicked, penance the spread, make sure your power word shield is quite often. Again, when globals start coming down with Archangel, you can just kind of use it in a repetitive formation. When Master Spell comes out, just use it once more, but again, it's a great initiator prior to the team fight, to get things kind of going. Desperate Prayer would be something to consider if you are getting targeted. Again, it's kind of like a last resort, but in my many other videos associated with target calls, you generally don't get target called, or I'm sorry, you don't get targeted as a healer in RBGs for the most part. Again, it's just a very strong conservative healer, and we have a lot of defensives in order to negate that in particular. So keep that in mind. Desperate Prayer would be a great option to use if you are being attacked. Otherwise, just keep it as it is. Don't have to spam it, don't have to start it off with. Just great to use as an opportunity if you are being attacked in a team fight. Power Word Life would be to consider when one of your team is falling low. It's a great option in addition to Void Shift. I would suggest starting out with, you could do either really. I mean, you're likely going to be at relatively full health. You could just go with Void Shift, Power Word, Life. Actually, yeah, you would want to go with Void Shift. Void Shift would be something to consider if your target was getting substantially low in team fight, and what you can do is just swap HP with it and then hit Power Word Life, as I mentioned in my other video, to heal yourself back to full. So a great combination would be to Void Shift that target that's being targeted on your team, and then using Power Word Life on yourself to heal yourself back up to full. So great way to go about doing that. The next, in terms of offensive spells, or defensive spells for that matter, in addition to spamming Power and Radiance quite often too as well for AoE heals and keeping up that atonement in team fights, you can also apply Power Word Barrier too as well. Again, Power Word Barrier is a great situational group kind of setting defensive reduction in addition to preventing damage and spellcasting. It's great for using it on your backline, just because the amount of damage is significantly reduced by those who are from the melee that may be hopping on your backline, but also prevents any particular spell casting from being negated for your backline, so they can continue casting thereafterwards and take less damage. Something to consider to be putting on your backline in particular, as opposed to your front line, just because your melee doesn't benefit it as much as your backline. Another great tool or utility spell would be to use the Pain Suppression. Pain Suppression is great, and I often use this as one of my first defensives on our target that's being hit on our team. So if I notice someone's going down relatively quick, it means that they're being targeted, RBGs, and so I'll pop a Pain Suppression and the damage will be reduced, and they'll likely switch targets, which is great. So I try to keep it around 50% until I have to pop Pain Suppression when they know they can't take them down. It reduces all damage taken by 40 seconds for 8 seconds. I'm sorry, 40% for 8 seconds. It's also it's not dispellable as well too. So, you know, use it when the time is needed. That was kind of like one of the priority defensive spells prior to using Void Shift or Power Word Life to get to that point. It's one of your first escapes for, you know, saving yourself or saving another in that team fight. So in terms of offensive moves, I often prioritize mind games, my mind blast, powered solons, smite, and so forth a little bit more into the mid to late team fights, just because the damage is kind of scaled inwards to the team already. Don't want to waste it just so far, just so quick thus far. So I would wait until about mid team fight or so, into the late team fight if need be, to be using this kind of setup. I just based it off of cooldowns, so it's mind games would go from first on the target. Again, these are all single target spells, so what you're going to do is want to focus the offensive heals, that damage, like penance and smite and so forth, and power and solons, in addition to your shadow spells for the target in that team fight. That's your contribution basically to the team fight in terms of the damage output that you put on, is spreading the power and radiance, putting on the penance, mind games, mind blast, powered solons, smite. Mind games, excellent spell. Use it as a kill secure move. So again, mid team fight when more people are damaged and more people are generally lower than they are at the initial team fight or beginning of stages, you would look to apply mind games on the target of the team fight, which will help bring down that particular target and ensure a relatively quick kill. Again, Mind Blast is a great additive to that too as well, just to increase your damage output. So use that as often as possible. It also helps to reduce the cooldown of penance when you use Mind Blast. It also has if you cast 4 of these 4 Mind Blast, powered solons, or smite, you can get additional 3 bolts too as well. So your penance is going to be your primary target dealer damage thereafter this combination. So Mind Blast is 2, counts for 2, powered solons counts for 1, and then smite counts for the second, or the fourth for that matter. And so in this order, from left to right, would be Mind Games, Mind Blast, powered solons, smite. And if they happen to be low for whatever reason, you can use Shadow or Death, which is also another kill secure move at that point, which happens actually more often than anything. So Mind Games, Mind Blast, powered solons, smite. You can cast smite relatively freely, and you don't have to worry about too much healing. Generally done as your priority if you're, tilting in favor for team fights for yourself and the rest of your team. So use that in that particular situation. Don't start off with smite and keep using smite and just as a priority spell. Use it as a fallback for winning those team fights. If you're rolling on those team fights and you've got everything on cooldown for the most part and your heals are still at top, you can absolutely put more damage output by using smite. It's not insta cast, but it has no cooldown. 1.1 second. I mean, it just adds to the damage output, which increases the healing taken as well too for your team through atonement. And there's also benefits that come from using smite too as well, so that are associated with your PvP talent. So again, yeah, that's going to go from Mind Games, Mind Blast, powered solons, smite as your offensive shadow spells, and then Shadow or Death, just to kind of seal the deal if that happens to come to case. Just make sure you're keeping your trinket on hand too as well, just in case you get in a heavy 6-second stun for whatever reason. It's a great way to pop it. Just be wary, don't pop it too early in a 2 or 3 second stun. Just make sure it's 6 seconds in order to get out of that. So yeah, we've got the offensive initial healing and defensive spells. You got from left to right. You've got the utility base too as well, just in case as well too. Some snares, some mobility, and so forth, and then some additional left to right heals too as well. That's pretty common that you're not going to be using Power Life really often, so keep it on the right side of your action bar, because your 4 fingers that work with the action bar, 1, 2, 3, and 4, would benefit from using spells that you use more often than others. Again, cast Powered Radiance too. That's going to be very important in terms of keeping atonement scaled up on your team, in addition to just getting a nice burst of AOL chunked healing to keep everyone up in those team fights. You'll notice just the heals are so easy to use for Disc Priest when you get this rotation done properly. The next would be, actually we just got a couple more left over, so Fade, obviously use it for when you're being snared, because it does benefit off of one of your PvP talents, or one of your talent specs for that matter. Make sure you're using it when you're snared, typically when you're snared out by a warrior or a DK, or any other class that basically has an undispellable snare that can keep you locked up and trained. You really want to avoid getting trained as a Disc Priest. I keep getting pulled back and forth, and I can't escape a DK. I haven't figured out how I can possibly escape a DK just yet in team fights. He'll just keep pulling me back. He'll keep pulling me out of the team fight. He'll keep me. It's just a nightmare. So use Fade in that particular situation, and don't use it otherwise. If you're going to use Dispel, again, since you'll be using Mass Dispel quite often, use Dispel typically for yourself, because it is an 8-second cooldown and the target of your team that's being targeted. You don't have to go out of your way and dispel everyone on your team in a 10v10. Your priorities for an 8-second cooldown of Purify, since you can only get one charge of it, is to use it on yourself or the target that's being targeted on our time. By all means, don't stress yourself with that. Your Master Spells will compensate for that as soon as they're back on cooldown and so forth. One last spell would be Mind Control. That is very situational. So again, Mind Control will be used just to take, control for I believe a 3-second period. For PvP players, it's great, again, situational. So if you're in a mid-match in either storm, what you want to do is, if the heals are appropriate and everyone's topped off, great option, and you're kind of scaling in that team fight too as well, or landsliding that team fight and winning. What you want to do is get Mind Control and use Mind Control on their backline. Healers in particular, do not use it on their DPS, use it on the heals. The heals are going to be very important to Mind Control. So the Mind Control will allow you to have them get thrown off the ledge, or if you can walk them off the ledge, it works great. Mind Control is also great at like Lumber Mill, at Arathi Basin. In certain situations like that, can really tilt a team fight even that much more into your favor by eliminating and getting rid of a healer, etc. During those team fights. Again, it is situational. If you have the opportunity to do it, by all means. If you don't, really prioritize it. It's not a priority. You're not going to be starting off with Mind Control. You're going to get kicked. You're going to get silenced. It's not worth it. So it's important just to use it when the opportunity arises. Otherwise, it's just kind of useless for that matter. Couple utilities spec over here that I don't use often, but just kind of have as general buffs. Levitate's great to work your way through water passages and so forth. If you happen to be carrying the flag in like Twin Peaks, you can use Levitate to levitate on the water and cross the water faster to your flag room. You can use it on your tank, who's also doing that too as well. Really, Levitate is actually really versatile. I'd be surprised. It's insta-cast, you can use it on anyone. It's just an additional utility base that you can use through different environments. And primarily using it, to jump off a LM if BS is in trouble at Arathi Basin. You can use Levitate to head down there. So use it at, again, a situational. It's very situational. An additional leap of faith, Levitate is very situational. So it kind of gives you the option to go ahead and do so. Mind Vision, one of the last spells. I use this from time to time. If you do have the app, not the app, I'm sorry, the add-on, it's called Battleground Enemies. You can check out the description link. Battleground Enemies. So what you can do is actually vision the opposite team, which is unbelievable. You can actually start it in start it during games, and you can see their movement by clicking on their faceplate on Battleground Enemies. So what you can do is see their movement, like where they're going, where they're going to be sitting, etc. With Mind Vision at any given point in time. It has an unlimited range too as well. So it is a bit of a cheat in terms of location, knowing where things are going. It's a great way to give callouts. Say there's only one person sitting at a base, you can use that Mind Vision in order to, figure out where they are and what the situation is looking to be in terms of, can you cap this, can you not? If it's ghosted, is it not? So Mind Vision is just another utility spec that priests can use to benefit location. and callouts and so forth too as well. Again, make sure you have Power Word Fortitude start up at the beginning of the map. You know, beginning of the base. Make sure everyone's buffed up. The extra 5%, it really does wonders. So just increase stamina. It's just more difficult to kill. Mind Sooth. I don't use Mind Sooth at all, actually. I often just use that as PvE. I've actually never applied it to PvP. So I could probably look into a little bit more than I have, but I don't use it. So, anyways, hopefully that kind of discussed a bit of rotation. Just kind of like a quick recap. We're looking at just, you know, in terms of first, second, last, in terms of kind of spell rotation. You're going to start out with Power Word Infusion. You want to throw out a Mass Spell in those team fights. Make sure since everyone's generally grouped together in those team fights and have it split, great time to use Mass Spell. You can apply Archangel to start. You can also get Rapture to start too as well. You could actually start with, you can start with Archangel to get the Absorption buff for Rapture. Start with those two. When everyone has the Atonement set up on them during a 10v10, just go ahead and apply Dark Angel as well. Make sure your PI is being applied to as well to your, you know, specific damage dealer that outweighs the other damage dealers and so forth. It prefers it, it benefits it from the most. Utility would be for Leap of Faith, situational again, situational, Angelic Feather. Utility, appealing for your backline would be Psychic Scream and Void Tendrils. In terms of healing wise, make sure you're spreading Purge the Wicked on everyone. Just, you know, click, tab 4, tab 4, tab 4, and that'll just take you out of the target, and you'll be able to tab out in and out of targets really easily. And then spread it with Penance. I mean, make it easy for yourself, and just, if you want to do less tabs, just spread it with Penance. Hit it with a Penance Star afterwards. Make sure your shields are procced more often too as well. Make sure you're really casting Power Word Shield on targets being hit. Great defensive barrier. Relatively small cooldown, and Renews help too as well. Reduce that cooldown of Power Word Shield. So have that often as possible. Dispel Magic Dispel Magic is going to be primarily focused on the opposing enemy target. Flash Heal is opportunity based when it procs. You don't have to free cast it or just sit there and cast it, let it proc itself, and it's additional way for those Purge of Wickeds to build up. Let's see. Oh yeah, Shadow Fiend. Whenever you're low on mana, I guess I forgot that one too. Whenever you're low on mana, just make sure you're using Shadow Fiend. I prefer to use this anywhere below 50 to 70% of my mana being out of that time. So Shadow Fiend is a great way to replenish some mana during that period of time. It's not going to be all too great, you know, sometimes they die. But it's just another opportunity to put out more damage, which in return heals you too as well. Let's see. Again, Mind Control is situational. You know, don't worry about that. Desperate Prayer can be only used on just yourself during those team fights if you are being targeted. Make sure you're just spamming Power Word Radiance as often as possible, since you're going to be talented in that as well. It's going to help your Atonement stay refreshed, and as well as just make a nice AoE burst healing. Your Shadow spells are going to be used as a single target on the opposing target that you have in target called. Pain Suppression on the target of your team that's also being called to reduce and mitigate the damage that's coming in. Power Word Barrier is going to be used on the Power Word Barrier is going to be a great way to use on your backline to mitigate damage from an aggressive front line for melee. And the Void Shift and Power Word Life combo. Use Void Shift first to help, you know, replenish that life, because you're likely going to be at relatively higher HP anyways if someone's going down really quick. And then hit yourself with Power Life, and you'll both be full HP in no time. Purify. Again, that Purify is just going to be applied to your target on your team or yourself. It has an 8-second cooldown. Don't be worried about spamming it all the time. It really just needs to go on, you know, your team in particular. So have that as, say, often as possible on yourself or your targeted team member in order to, you know, reduce snares and so forth. Fade's going to be used for just, you know, removing snares and any particular effects that you can think of within a 30-second cooldown. Again, it's going to be applied to more warrior DKs to mitigate their chains of ices and their hamstrings and so forth. So use that for non-dispellable buffs that your Dispel cannot take out, like an Entangling Rings or so forth. Again, yeah, hopefully you got some information out of this video in terms of a bit of rotation. I'm going to actually demonstrate a bit too as well too on this dummy, kind of give you an idea of kind of how it starts out and so forth, or how it typically start out. But it kind of gives you an idea from left to right. It's great to set up your action bar from left to right in order to get more out of knowing where your spells are going. From left to right, it makes it easier just to kind of recognize, you know, what spells are which, where they're going, etc. So, great way to take advantage of that to its fullest opportunity, in my opinion. So, you can start out with PI, get a Master Spell out there, start with your Rapture, start spreading your Purge the Wickeds, get some Power Word Shields out, Renew, you know, you can just hit a Powered Radiance if you want at that point. Your Power Word Shields can be big, just keep doing that. Power Word Shields, Renew, don't fuck that. Another Powered Radiance can go out, and then just keep applying Penance too as well. Go ahead and apply Dark Angel, again that was earlier, but let's get more damage out now that you have Atonement. Every time that procs with Powered Radiance, spam it, it's so important. More shields, etc. More Penance. Penance is going to be a little bit more quicker, so hit that more often. You can even just tab out like I'm doing here. Just tab, 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 etc. Great way to just spread that Purge the Wicked if need be. Next would be your Mind Blast. Pretty straightforward. Go from left to right. And just hit him with Smite if wanted. See the cooldown of this is going to increase your bolts by 7. Some additional damage and healing to your team, so the more often that you do that kind of combo, you'll see it procs up and it's ready to cast one more time. Keep it up like that. Make sure your Purge the Wickeds are up. Benefit off of Renew too as well. Make sure Renews are always constantly up too as well. And then just keep at it. Do that in terms of rotation. Smite's going to be important. You can do that as kind of like a last resort, but it helps you cool down for your penance. It also gives you that 7 volt, which is more damage, which is more healing. Make sure you Purge the Wickeds up more often too as well, so it'll be important. And Shadow Word Death just to kind of seal the deal. Make sure you gotta kill it and so forth. So again, Power Word Shield's gonna be big, important, especially on you initially in team fights. So make sure you're using that on yourself because your damage output that you put out refills that Power Word Shield. So you can mitigate damage personally by just having a shield on you active at most times. So make sure that's active on you in addition to your team too as well. Well, hopefully you enjoyed this video and got some information out of it as well. This is my rotation I typically work with for PvP RBGs. It seems incredibly effective. I'm often the top healer in these RBGs, in addition to damage output too as well for Disc Priest, in relation to other damage dealers and so forth. So it's important to know your rotation to make use of the most of your specialization and perform at your optimal level in order to, improve your gameplay and improve the quality of the game, improve the quality of the team comp too as well, or your team comp, and make sure everyone's topped off full and shield reduction so you can play your class to its highest level. So hopefully you got some information out of that nonetheless, and again, I have any additional information listed down in the description down below, so feel free to check out any of that in relation to some of the content, rotation-wise. Just a good reference, in terms of me being verbal about it. It's all handwritten and on a site, so you're welcome to check out some of that content. Obviously, I'll be posting that down below. We also do have a top-tier PvP Discord, in addition to multiple social media sites that you're welcome to like, comment, share, and subscribe to show your support for moderators and content creators such as myself. And I also do have a Patreon that is as low as $1 a month. You can support too as well. That can also support your co-moderator and support the community that I'm looking to build. So have a wonderful rest of the afternoon. Thanks for stopping by, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers.